Across America's skyline, cranes stand frozen. Construction sites, once buzzing with energy, lie abandoned, skeletons of dreams deferred. In June 2025, the Trump administration doubled tariffs on imported steel to 50%. The move was sold as a defense of American industry. But steel is not just a commodity. It's the spine of every bridge, every home, every city. And as the cost of steel soared, a quiet paralysis spread. The promise of building the future suddenly shattered by the weight of its own foundation. On June 4, 2025, a new executive order was signed. Steel and aluminum tariffs would double overnight, from 25% to 50%. It was a simple policy on paper, just numbers and percentages. But for the construction industry, it was a seismic shift. Steel beams, rebar, girders, materials essential to every building project, became 25% more expensive overnight. Across the country, costs skyrocketed. Builders scrambled to renegotiate contracts. Projects that once balanced delicately on thin margins now teetered into red ink. For developers, it meant halting projects midstream. For home buyers, it meant delays and soaring prices. And for small construction companies, it meant something worse. Survival was no longer guaranteed. As bids evaporated and financing dried up, America's cities and suburbs began to feel the tremors. The scaffolding of economic growth, built on construction, was beginning to crack. The first casualties were residential projects. By mid-2025, material costs in housing projects had surged nearly 18%. Steel-framed apartment complexes were abandoned halfway through completion. Home builders passed on the costs to buyers. The average price of a new single-family home rose sharply, pricing out thousands of potential homeowners. First-time buyers were hit hardest. Mortgages that once seemed attainable now floated beyond reach. Meanwhile, the commercial sector fared no better. Shopping centers, warehouses, office towers, all projects slowed, some grinding to a halt. Local contractors who operated on razor-thin margins started folding. Permits issued for new constructions plummeted. From Dallas to Detroit, cities witnessed a slow-motion freeze. It wasn't just numbers. It was workers sent home indefinitely. It was families watching their dreams of home ownership evaporate. It was developers, large and small, confronting a brutal reality. In the world of steel tariffs, only the strongest could survive. For everyone else, the cost of building the American dream had become too heavy to bear. On the ground, the ripple effects deepened. Small and mid-sized contractors, once the lifeblood of local economies, found themselves cornered. For companies like DPI Construction in Illinois, survival was only possible thanks to one thing: the Buy America requirement tied to federal infrastructure funding. Federal projects demanded American-made materials, shielding a few firms from global price hikes. But most builders worked on private developments, and for them, there was no such shield. No exemptions, no safety nuts. Costs spiraled beyond what any spreadsheet could sustain. Some firms delayed projects, hoping for relief. Others cut corners, choosing cheaper materials, risking quality. Still others folded entirely, leaving half-built skeletons along highways and neighborhoods. Meanwhile, city councils slashed budgets for public housing and infrastructure improvements as estimates soared out of reach. In a country once defined by ambition and construction, the skyline itself seemed to pause. The cranes stopped moving. The foundation of America's growth, brick by brick, beam by beam, was quietly crumbling. By fall 2025, the damage was undeniable. Housing starts dropped 12% year over year, the steepest decline since the 2008 financial crisis. Contractors laid off workers by the thousands. Welders, electricians, crane operators, all left to scramble for scarce jobs. Young families found their dreams deferred. New subdivisions sat empty, frames exposed to rain and wind as builders walked away mid-project. In places like Phoenix and Atlanta, entire developments turned into ghost towns before a single resident could move in. Banks tightened lending. Insurance companies raised premiums on abandoned properties. Communities felt the strain, not just economically, but socially. Empty houses meant fewer neighbors. Fewer neighbors meant struggling schools, shuttered local businesses, and rising crime. The collapse wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. It was a slow, grinding erosion of the American promise. The promise that if you worked hard, you could own a piece of the future. Now, that promise was rusting alongside the steel beams that once held it up. Beneath the crumbling scaffolds lay an uncomfortable truth. The tariffs were never just about protecting American jobs. Behind closed doors, industry lobbyists from major steel producers had been pushing for increased protectionism for months. Their interest wasn't in affordable housing or infrastructure growth. It was profit. Cleveland Cliffs, Inc., one of America's largest steelmakers, posted record gains in the quarter following the tariff hike. Meanwhile, small construction companies, those without lobbyists or political clout, were left to bear the brunt. Internal analyses from construction trade groups, quietly circulated among members, warned of a sustained freeze in residential and commercial development if tariffs persisted. But these warnings rarely made headlines. In the media, the narrative stayed simple: strong tariffs, strong America. In the shadows, the reality festered. The dream of homeownership from millions of Americans was collateral damage. Communities in desperate need of affordable housing saw blueprints gather dust. For an industry built on growth and optimism, steel tariffs had introduced something corrosive: paralysis. Not by foreign enemies, but by policies crafted at home. And while politicians celebrated the headlines, entire neighborhoods were being written out of the future. America's greatest strength has always been its ability to build, to imagine skylines before they rise, to believe that every family deserves a foundation of their own. But in 2025, that belief met a new kind of barrier. Not a shortage of ambition, not a lack of need, but policies that priced dreams beyond reach. And as steel beams rust and scaffolds fall silent, a question remains. If we can no longer build the future, what happens to the American dream?